All right, it is time to continue our off-season series in which we look at college basketball programs, the marquee programs, what they've done this off-season, and give them a grade. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, now is the time to do so, because all end of May into June, as programs are now set, players are returning to campus, the transfer portal season is basically done. We are reviewing some of the best programs in college basketball: North Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana. Today, we will hit on the Michigan Wolverines. And a couple things before we get into Michigan specifically, what they've done this offseason. The first thing is, all of these reviews are a little bit different, right? Like when I'm talking about Indiana, there was so much more work to do for Mike Woodson when he arrived in Indiana than Juwan Howard this offseason. John Calipari completely revamped his program since last season's disappointment. With Juwan Howard, there really wasn't all that much to do. The culture was established. If you listen to this channel, if you listen to my podcast, you know I love Juwan Howard. I love who he is. I love how much he loves the University of Michigan and the culture that was established last season. And so because of it, there wasn't a ton for him to do this offseason, but let's get into it. Let's talk about what has happened with Michigan basketball since we last saw them in Indianapolis in the Elite Eight against UCLA. First of all, and I think this is going to sound dumb, but I actually think it's important. First of all, he kept the number one recruiting class in the country intact. And for people who are not familiar, yes, Michigan, not Duke, not Kentucky, not Arizona, not North Carolina. The Michigan Wolverines had the number one recruiting class in the high school class of 2021. A bunch of studs, just stars in this class. Caleb Houston, I try not to give too much hype to freshmen, one and done, this and that. Caleb Houston is a star, a big 6'8" wing. I think he perfectly fits into the modern college game, the modern NBA game, what Juwan Howard wants to do. I do expect him to be a one and done consensus top 10 kid, McDonald's All-American, just a superstar in the making. Musa Diabate, a 7-footer, a center. He is coming in. Kobe Buffkin, a combo guard. Frankie Collins, a point guard. I bring all this in to say the first job of Juwan Howard, and again, this will sound dumb, was to just keep that freshman class intact. And to his credit, he did it. And I know some of you are probably sitting there saying, dude, Torres, why wouldn't the freshmen come? Well, all I'll say is this is a different world that we live in. And when you factor in that these freshmen committed to Michigan, some of them without ever visiting the campus because of COVID, when you consider the fact that when these freshmen committed, they did not know that seniors this past year would get an extra year of eligibility, there was always the possibility that some of them would just say, you know what? I've had time to think about it. I committed a year ago. I'm not totally sure. Maybe I'm going to reopen my recruitment. Credit to Juwan Howard. They're all signed, sealed, and delivered and ready to come to Michigan. And so at the very least, if nothing else happened, the number one recruiting class in the country with a bunch of difference makers, including Caleb Houston, who I think is going to be a star in the Big Ten, are arriving in Ann Arbor over the next couple weeks. On top of that, in terms of the roster itself from last season, I'll be honest, like one of the single most shocking things that has happened, in my opinion, since the season has ended, is that Hunter Dickinson, who was all Big Ten this year, 14.7 rebounds per game. He was essentially, do you want to call him Michigan's best player? I don't know. He was their leading scorer and leading rebounder. You could argue maybe it was Isaiah Livers. You could argue maybe it was Franz Wagner last year. But the bottom line is Hunter Dickinson didn't even test the NBA draft process. And I'm not saying that Hunter Dickinson is like this can't-miss star. How is he coming back for a second year of college basketball? But when you are the leading scorer, leading rebounder at an all, play at an all Big Ten level for a team that competes for a Final Four berth, usually those guys at least declare for the draft. Instead, he has decided, it appears as though, to come back. Now, nothing is official yet. I believe the deadline to declare has not officially arrived yet. But on top of that, when you hear other players talking about next year's roster, specifically Devontae Jones, we'll get into in a minute, they're talking about, hey, I can't wait to come play with Hunter Dickinson. So that speaks to the fact that it appears as though Hunter Dickinson is coming back, and I think you can legitimately talk about him as a preseason National Player of the Year candidate. On top of that, we had the fifth-year transfers, or the fifth-year extra year of eligibility stuff. And so when you looked at Michigan, look, realistically, were you going to get back all your seniors? It probably wasn't going to happen. Mike Smith was already a grad transfer. He was probably going to pursue professional options. Chauncey Brown, grad transfer. The idea of him coming back for another year, who knows? Was it going to happen? Was it not going to happen? But Isaiah Livers, I should mention as well, he declared for the draft last year. He took it down to the deadline. It was clear that he wanted to attempt to become a professional. So the fact that you got him back for a fourth year, it was probably never realistic that he was coming back for year 5. But to Juwan Howard's credit, he did get back Eli Brooks. He did get back his fourth leading scorer, who averaged just under 10 points, 3 assists per game. And oh, by the way, shot almost 40% from 3. And so in terms of the fifth-year transfer, I keep saying transfer, the fifth-year players who had the ability to use their extra year of eligibility, Eli Brooks is back. And so when you look at the impact that Eli Brooks is going to have, the impact that Hunter Dickinson is going to have, the fact that you have the number 1 recruiting class coming in, if nothing else happened, you would have sat there and said, you know what? I really like this Michigan team. But then on top of everything else, you know what Juwan Howard did? He did something that he has done about as well as anybody since he entered the college ranks just a few short years ago. He went into the transfer portal and got a young man, a player by the name of Devontae Jones, who has spent the last couple years at Coastal Carolina, last 3 seasons there. Last year, I don't know, what did he do? Just a Conference USA Player of the Year, 19 points, 7 rebounds as a 6'1" guard, 3 assists per game. He is now coming in and is going to take over that Mike Smith role as the playmaking lead point guard. And what was interesting about Mike Smith is if you follow the Michigan basketball team, which you know, Mike Smith entered this program a year ago basically as a guy who was one of the best scorers in all of college basketball a year before at Columbia. Juwan Howard convinces him to come in, says, hey, sacrifice a few points. If you want to play at the highest levels of basketball, you're 5'10", get others involved, prove you can score, but also prove that you can be a true point guard in the process. Devontae Jones, it sounds like the same pitch was delivered to him, and it sounds like he bought it hook, line, and sinker. Hey, look, you proved at a lower level you can score. Now come to Michigan, compete for a Big Ten championship, compete for a Final Four, compete for maybe a national championship, and in the process, prove to the professional ranks that you are a player that is capable of becoming a true point guard, getting others involved. And so when you factor in that they filled in the hole at point guard, Hunter Dickinson is coming back. Eli Brooks is coming back. The number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country is coming in. I am very excited about this team. And frankly, I'm very excited about the future of this program as Juwan Howard continues to have things rolling. I love the culture that he's building. Again, as I said off the top, I love his commitment to the University of Michigan and how much he loves that school. And so with that said, when I look at Michigan's offseason, I give Juwan Howard an A. There wasn't much to do, but everything that he could do, he did. No major marquee players transferred out. Hunter Dickinson's coming back. Eli Brooks is coming back. Devontae Jones is coming in. Number 1 recruiting class on its way. I love this Michigan program and cannot wait to see what the future holds. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button. I'm talking college hoops all year long. Also talking a ton of college football as we get closer to the season. Please make sure to subscribe. Make sure to do your part and hit that little bell so you get new videos every time they post up. And of course, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram.